Thanks. Continuing coverage of this week's shootings involving federal authorities. In Portland, police identified the two people shot as two Venezuelan nationals. DHS says one of the suspects was driving a vehicle and tried to run over law enforcement agents. One was shot in the arm, another was shot in the chest. Both are in stable condition tonight. One of the suspects is also now in FBI custody. Homeland Security has accused both suspects of being Garna gang members. In Minnesota, body cam footage shows the moments leading up to the shooting of a 37-year-old woman. Renee Good was shot after an encounter with federal agents on Wednesday. Still unclear at this time what led up to that shooting. Federal agencies have said Good's actions were domestic terrorism, while local and state officials have rejected that. Vice President J.D. Vance said yesterday Good was, quote, part of a broad left-wing network. President Trump responding to a question today on his assessment of that situation.
I watched that yesterday, and there were a lot of different forms to it. But there was a woman screaming, shame, 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 shame. She was a agitator, probably a paid agitator, but in my opinion, she was an agitator. You have agitators, and we will always be protecting ICE, and we're always going to be protecting our Border Patrol and our law enforcement. Yeah.
Thousands of protests have sprung up across the country because of what happened. A community came together at Cherry Park in Springdale tonight to honor victims of violence. That vigil offered a space for healing and solidarity. 5 News reporter Laura Castleman was there and tells us more.
Tonight's candlelight vigil comes after an Indianapolis mom was shot and killed by an ICE agent earlier this week. I talked with organizers who tell me that this is a moment for the community to come together, gather, and mourn as one. The vigil focused on remembering victims of ICE-related violence, including incidents already reported this year.
Unfortunately, it's pretty bad right now, but this has been an issue that's been ongoing for many, many years now.
Ervin Camacho, co-founder of IDEA, says the vigil was meant to be a safe space, open to anyone who wanted to come together, grieve, and feel supported by the community.
Grief together and share frustrations that people might have with the current state of ICE in our communities, in our state, and in our country.
I'm worried for our future. I'm worried for our today. As much as our tomorrow, I'm worried about the future for my kids.
Community members came out by the dozens to show their support.
This is not the America that I grew up with, and it's not the one I want them to grow up with. So I want them to see that we do stick together, we do care for our neighbors, we do love each other.
It's sad what happened in Minneapolis. Our prayers out for that family.
Attending for the ones that can't be there.
It's just a good opportunity to be in community and to see other individuals that empathize with folks that unfortunately have been victims of ICE violence.
Yeah, I was not expecting this many people, but it's great. It's actually it's so nice to see the community coming together, paying our respects.
As candles flickered across Cherry Park, organizers say the goal wasn't just to mourn, but to remind families impacted by violence that they are not alone. The vigil lasted today from 6 to 8 p.m., but people who attended told me that they are here to represent people who can't represent themselves, and also for justice. In Springdale, covering news where you live, Laura Castleman, 5 News.
All right, Laura, thanks. New tonight in Benton County, police have arrested a 27-year-old man on charges of rape and 200 counts of possessing and distributing child sex abuse materials. Oscar Rivas was booked into the county jail this week. Court documents say he was arrested after police got a sexual assault allegation tip that happened on Christmas Day. Investigators then searched Rivas's phone and allegedly found the child sex abuse material. He is being held tonight on a $200,000 bond. Meanwhile, in a separate case, a West Fork man indicted by a state grand jury in New York. Braden Story is accused of enticing a 14-year-old to record material depicting child sexual abuse. He faces up to 60 years in prison if he is convicted. The Johnson County Sheriff's Office says it has terminated a captain following an internal investigation. Terry Cooper was let go after the investigation uncovered donations for the Sheriff's Office Christmas party were misused. Sheriff Tom Hughes says employees who were in charge of the Christmas event took steps to ensure they received the best gifts. The incident was administrative, so no criminal charges are expected. One other employee was demoted over the incident. The Arkansas Secretary of State says a bunch of duplicate voter registrations have been found following an analysis of new data. It was shared from the states of Tennessee and Alabama, and it reveals more than 1,200 people appear to be registered to vote in both Arkansas and one of those two other states. Secretary Colchester says he's working with the out-of-state officials to see which inaccurate registrations need to be removed. Meanwhile, the latest report from the Arkansas Health Department says flu intensity levels have dropped just a bit, but levels are still high. And with students going back to class from holiday break this week, it's causing districts now to take extra precautions. At Fayetteville schools, district leaders are expecting a peak in sickness rates next week. The Director of Health Services says the district has already allocated extra staff and hours to sanitize classroom. The district issued extra communication to parents about disease prevention. Leaders say if a child has a fever, they cannot return to school until they are fever-free for at least 24 hours. Meanwhile, the country continues to deal with the fallout of Affordable Care Act subsidies expiring last month. Many Americans saying they would rather go uninsured instead of paying for premiums that are likely to skyrocket. One of those is Martha White of Northwest Arkansas. She says she's taking extra care of her health and safety over the next 8 months while waiting for Medicare to kick in. She says, though, she has a plan, but she's worried about others.
What are they going to do? And it must be very frightening for these families that are they going to have food on the table, or do they have to pay this for medicine? Do they have gas to go in the car to go to work, or do they just pay that amount that they have to pay in order to get health care?
We told you last night the House passed a 3-year extension of those ACA subsidies, but the House's version unlikely to pass when it hits the Senate floor. The Arkansas Education Department says it needs more money for education freedom accounts, or what some call vouchers. Those help some families choose to pay for private schools or home supplies. Carter Thweet tells us how much the state's looking for to keep that program going.
They like to call them educational freedom accounts, but we know what they really are. They're vouchers.
Whatever you call them, the state needs more money for this program, which lets families use state funds for things like private school tuition. In a letter that's been forwarded to lawmakers, the Department of Education asked for $32 million for EFAs for the 2025-26 school year. April Reisma works right across the street from the state capitol as president of the Arkansas Education Association.
We can see from other states how much of a budget hole that they're getting into several years down the road, and it just keeps getting larger and larger because more and more folks are taking advantage of it. And why wouldn't you? It's basically free money.
This school year, the first time every student in Arkansas was eligible, likely leading to the higher costs. In their letter requesting the $32 million, the Department of Education CFO said the program empowers parents to be able to choose a school based on students' individual needs. Reisma isn't so sure this is the best use of roughly $300 million, which is what the program would cost this year if this latest request gets approved.
Once public schools are fully funded and those funds are appropriated correctly in each and every school, that's when you're going to see some real change. And so much so that we won't need all of these extra private schools.
In a statement Friday, the Department of Education said this money will allow the more than 44,000 students in the program to continue to excel in an educational environment of their family's choosing. Reisma says students using the money for private schools hurts everyone.
We have to take care of our public education schools first before we start working on private schools that are for profit.
Was Carter Thweet reporting. Now, state lawmakers plan to discuss this request on Tuesday of next week in a subcommittee meeting at the Capitol. If they vote to advance it, a larger group of lawmakers will discuss it again next Friday.